But if we don't do that and we don't get a full deep cycle, then we're getting a little bit worse every day. The Building Biology Institute recommend at night a body voltage reading of no concern is 10 millivolts. Of slight concern is 10 to 100 millivolts. Anything above 1,000 millivolts is considered to be of extreme concern. I'm going to get really controversial here and probably piss off an awful lot of people in the grounding community. Grounding outside, becoming part of nature, very good. Grounding inside, becoming part of your household electrical system, not good. So when I ground inside, I am making my body part of the circuit, and the 60 hertz electric field is now flowing through my body continuously. Not good.
This is Decentralized Radio. I'm Tristan.
And I'm Ryan.
The goal of this podcast is to help educate you on how to live your most optimal life. We will host industry expert guests to shed light on topics that matter.
We are not gurus, rather two individuals who have had to pave their own path to health and vitality, independent of the centralized systems that plague modern society.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Decentralized Radio. Today, we have Anthony Smith from EMF Safe on the line. How's it going, Anthony? Thanks for joining.
It's going well. Thank you. Appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, we have an exciting chat upcoming here. Ryan and I have been wanting to talk more in depth about EMFs for quite some time. So, yeah, this is going to be a good one. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm actually really stoked for this one because I feel like I'm going to have so many of my own misconceptions just like righted in this episode. So I'm ready to be told that I'm wrong and also not let the fear get to me from what I'm about to learn. But I think this will be a very good educational resource for our listeners because there's so much misconception about what's actually safe or like what is causing damage or like airplane mode this, like plug in headphone that. So I'll let you, Tristan, kind of get this headed on its way.
Yeah, Anthony. So I guess before maybe we set the groundwork for what are EMFs and why are they bad for you, what is your background and how did you get into this space? Because it's a pretty niche area. And yeah, obviously EMF Safe, you guys are building real solutions for this. So I guess how did you stumble upon wanting to be a part of EMF mitigation and EMF education?
Yeah, okay. Well, I've been into health and nutrition most of my life. I studied the nutritional side of things at college quite a few years ago. Been interested in health and nutrition ever since and various things. Got into red light therapy a few years back, and I was there was really no reasonably priced red light therapy devices around, so I started making my own and sold them to friends and various people. And then that led into the whole EMF thing, which is electromagnetic fields. And a lot of people are familiar with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, microwave ovens, smart meters, and that sort of thing. So the whole RF thing has really piqued everybody's attention, and rightfully so. It's definitely something we need to be informed about and aware of. So in the process of getting into EMFs, I bought some meters, was very surprised at what I was finding, the levels of EMF, and started going to people's houses and helping them and mitigate and what have you. Once you know what's there, once you've measured, then you are equipped to do something about it. But most people are just guessing. I get calls all the time. Well, what if I do this? It's like, well, good chance it's going to help you a little bit, but we don't even know that that's a problem for you unless we first measure. So it's like, going to a doctor. He's got a pretty good idea from his lifetime of experience what might be wrong with you, but he's still going to do some tests and just to confirm his diagnosis before he prescribes, medication or any kind of medical procedure. So we kind of need to do the same thing in our own homes. So EMF, electromagnetic fields, that's the electric field. And that's the big one, actually, that most people aren't even aware of. It's an issue, is the electric field coming out of 6 to 8 feet. comes out of every wire in the wall, floor, ceiling, and every ungrounded device that's plugged in. And as you know, most plugs these days don't have the ground. They just got the two pins. So they're ungrounded, and they're putting out, whether they turned on or not, if they're plugged in, they're putting out a field 6 to 8 feet in the room. And it's that 60 hertz AC electric field. It's the AC part of it that's actually doing the damage. There's lots of medical therapies that use DC current. Our bodies run on DC current, direct current. And one of the tests that a doctor might do for you is a EKG or an EEG. They're measuring the natural energy, the natural electricity in your body, but that's all DC. Mother Nature runs on DC current. We've thank you, Nikola Tesla, invented AC voltage, and it's actually that 60 hertz, that cycle, that frequency, that is doing most of the harm and the damage, and interferes with the mitochondria in the it interferes with the mitochondria, but it also interferes with the melatonin secretion with the pineal gland in the brain, which affects our sleep. So that's a very quick synopsis, and I'm sure you guys have questions. So rather than just rabbiting on for half an hour, I'll stop there and you can ask some questions.
Well, I will say this before, don't put yourself down too fast. People are here to listen to you. So I could ramble on all day long and be wrong 80% of the time. But what I find really interesting is I kind of want to take a little bit of a history lesson back, because I think it gives a little bit of context to sort of how we got to where we are. And I've done a lot of listening and quite a bit of reading into some of this like AC versus DC current stuff with Nikola Tesla and obviously Edison and all this stuff with JP Morgan Chase people and like all these different companies. And then obviously like GE and electric sort of putting in the grid and all this stuff and making everything AC adopted really quickly. But I would love to sort of get into a little bit of nitty gritty with the AC versus DC. Like a lot of people I think that are listening, that are in our audience, probably have heard those terms and have heard like we naturally run on DC electric current and stuff like that. I'd love to sort of dig into what is it particularly that's damaging about the AC current. And that goes in frequency a little bit. And then also, I know you're probably not like a history professor buff, but you probably know something about it. I kind of want to just for conversational sake, dig into sort of like why do we go AC versus DC like for everything? Because I feel like if we would have gone DC, we would have not had so many of these problems. I think maybe we can sort of just like, it's sort of a fun discussion, I thought.
Yeah, that is an interesting side of it. So everything is vibration and frequency. And it probably, if people think about sound, the certain sounds that you hear that make you feel good. The harmonics, everything about it. Some obviously excites you, some helps you relax. We have meditation music that brings down our vibration, our frequency. Our brains operate at different frequencies throughout the day during different activities. And part of the relaxation process, when people go into meditation, they're trying to get the brainwave activity down closer to between 8 and 12 hertz, which is cycles per second. So if you think of waves and frequency, you've got the number of times a wave or a frequency goes on and off in a second. So the 60 hertz AC electric field, the electricity is actually being turned on and off 60 times a second. So that creates a vibration and a frequency, just like each note in music has a different vibration and frequency. And our brain waves have different vibrations and frequencies, depends upon how active we are, if we're being thoughtful and creative, that has its own vibrational frequency. And when we sleep at night, to go to sleep, we have to get down to 8 to 12 hertz. The Schumann resonance, which is the natural vibrational frequency of the planet, is 7.83 hertz. And the natural frequency of our brains at rest is 7.83 hertz. So that's kind of like a reset button that we need to get to, or it's advantageous for us to get to every night. Now, if you're laying in a 60 hertz field, your head when you're laying in bed is probably 12 inches from a wire running through the wall that has 60 hertz AC electric field in it, electricity in it. There may be no current, nothing may be on, but that's putting out a field 6 to 8 feet. So your whole body is awash in 60 hertz. Now, I don't know if any of you are musicians, but if the drummer is playing a different drum beat than the beat that the guitarist or the singer is singing to, you've got an awful lot of confusion. So if your brain is trying to get down from 18, 20, 30, 40 hertz during the day, and we're trying to relax at night and get down to 8 to 12 to Schumann resonance, and then when you take that deep dive sleep at some point in the night where you no dreaming, you just take a deep dive sleep, you're going down to 4 hertz. Well, if you're laying in a 60 hertz electric field, if you've got that drummer doing 60 hertz and you're trying to get down to 12 hertz, 8 hertz, 4 hertz to get a good night's sleep, so your body, your brain, and all the cells in your body can do the reset, heal, detox, fix all the things we broke during the day so that we can get up in the morning and break them again. But if we don't do that and we don't get a full deep cycle, then we're getting a little bit worse every day. And over a period of time, days, weeks, months, years, that takes its toll. What we want to do is get a little bit better every day, not a little bit worse every day. Nobody died of smoking a cigarette, but 20 a day for 20 years, that'll do it to you. A tiny little bit of EMF probably is not going to hurt you, but a little bit every day that's negatively impacting your system can put up with a certain amount, just like we can put up with a certain amount of microbes. So what do? I've never seen a microbe, never smelt one, never seen one. You can't hear them, but we've been told that they're there. You can see them under a microscope. But because we know they're there, we need to keep the amount of microbes that we're exposed to on a daily basis below a threshold. We wash our hands, we wipe down counters, we cook our food. We do that automatically without thinking about it. We need to learn to wash our hands of EMF to keep the amount of EMF that we're exposed to on a daily basis below a threshold so that our bodies can handle it. Because if we go above the threshold, then we start getting sick. There's a negative impact to our overall health, the health of individual cells, and the overall health. And that's where dis-ease comes in, when our bodies, our cells, are no longer at ease.
Yeah, I think sleep in modern environment, the modern world we live in is more important than ever. There's more toxins that we're exposed to on a daily basis. So I think this is the important takeaway for folks, is that if your sleep is disrupted, you're not going through these natural restoration cycles each night. You're not getting the sufficient melatonin production, which is a master antioxidant. It regulates mitochondrial function. You have dysfunctional mitochondria, leads to chronic disease. So it's not just the fact that it's only the EMFs, of course. It's just disrupting your natural restorative mechanism, which also can happen with a lot of things. And something I want to get into is, we're talking about extremely low frequency ELF, 60 hertz. And you're saying, obviously, this is interfering with natural biological frequencies, which are also in the ELF range. But the power grid has, and tying into the history piece, the power grid has been around for some time. So why are we now only seeing like chronic disease spikes really accelerate in the past 30 to 50 years? Was there, any initial data or history in fighting the power grid or trying to fight back from, the health perspective? And kind of where do we go from here in terms of improving the, or mitigating the effects of the EMFs from electrical power?
Yeah, well, I think people have been affected far more than they realize. When the telegraph was first introduced back in the day, the operators were all getting sick, and all the symptoms that they were experiencing were very similar to EHS, which stands for electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome. Interestingly enough, Nikola Tesla, if you look at the physical symptoms that he was experiencing later in life, he was suffering from EHS. So Tesla himself, with all of the EMF that he had been exposed to throughout his life, that took a physical toll on his body, just like Marie Curie exposed to all the radiation. They didn't realize back in the day, and she died of radiation poisoning. Well, Tesla probably, I mean, he was pretty old, but nonetheless, you could argue that he actually died of EHS, electromagnetic hypersensitivity, electromagnetic poisoning to his body. So we know that, when radio was first introduced, people were getting sick and the symptoms were very similar. And then, of course, we had, the electric field, the electric grid. The reason they used AC, not DC, is because DC cannot be communicated, transported along wires. It deteriorates very quickly. So the AC field allowed them to transport the electric field over much, much longer periods of distances. That is not so much the case today. They figured out a way that high-powered DC can actually be transported. And even if they stuck with an AC grid, what really would be ideal, and I suspect probably not in the too distant future, what we'll go to is we'll have a AC coming to the house or coming to a number of houses, and the box in the street will convert the AC to DC, and then each house will run on DC, and that would solve the problem. More and more people are looking into integrating DC systems into their homes for that very reason, because it's not the electricity in and of itself; it is specifically the 60 hertz, and then the dirty electricity are harmonics of the 60 hertz that ride on top of the 60 hertz. So, and those frequencies tend to be things that, although it's a tiny, tiny percentage of the overall EMF that people are exposed to on a daily basis, those frequencies seem to be frequencies that certain people are very, very sensitive to. But getting a DE filter, a whole house DE filter, and getting rid of the DE, you're still left with a 60 hertz AC field, which is actually doing more harm. If you turn off the AC at night, the AC electric current at night, because we're 10 times more sensitive at night, which is because we're trying to heal and detox, you're probably reducing your daily EMF exposure by about 70%, 70. So there's a very simple fix to this. You can reduce your daily EMF exposure. And that's another reason why back in the day, after the initial exposure, people got sick and then our bodies got used to them. But like cigarettes, it's cumulative. So you were probably exposed to 10 to 100 times more the amount of EMF that I was exposed to when I was growing up. And my parents were exposed to 10 to 100 times less. My grandparents were exposed to 10 to 100 times less than them. So this is very much a cumulative thing. In addition to all of the, our nutrition is deteriorating. Back in the day, people had organic food. Most people grew their own food. Now we've got so many GMOs and preservatives. Our overall health and nutrition, plus blue light toxicity, which is another EMF. Blue light during the day is fine, no problem. I mean, the big ball up in the sky kicks out more EMF than anything man or any of our inventions could possibly hope to. But our bodies were designed to function optimally in very, very high EMF fields, natural EMF fields from the sun, blue light during the day. But what happens to the blue light in the afternoon? We watch the sunset. It goes from orange to yellow to red. And after sunset, there's no blue light. There's no light. And there's no EMF. So one of the signals to our body is the color spectrum frequency changing in the late afternoon and evening. Then, of course, you'd light the fire. You got infrared. So that's what we'd have historically in after sunset, which is very healing as well. Stimulates the mitochondria, reboots. It's like having your battery terminals all gunked up. And you take them off, you clean them up, you pour Coke over it all fizzes, and you clean up your battery terminals. Red light, near infrared, is what that does to the mitochondria, and so our cells operate functionally. We get that 40% of sunlight hitting us is infrared. Our windows filter out the infrared. Our car windows filter out infrared. The office windows, your home windows filter out the UV and the infrared. So by living indoors, we are living under an alien sun. And our bodies are not designed to live under those frequencies. They're designed to live under the big ball during the day, and they're designed to live in darkness, no EMFs at night. So we are messing with the natural order of things with our modern lifestyle. We've got away with it for quite a few years, but now it's taking a toll because of the level that we've brought it to, and our bodies just can't handle it anymore.
Hey, friend. Thanks for listening. If you really enjoy this podcast, it would be really appreciated if you left us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple, or subscribe to our content on YouTube. This helps us get to a larger reach and a larger audience to spread this wonderful free education. Yeah, wow, a lot of great stuff there. It's like everything, of course, that Ryan and I preach. So this is fantastic. I want to parse it out for people because you just mentioned a lot of great things. So first, there was early signs of EHS, and I forget what it was even called something else before they even used to understand. And it was like people thought everyone was crazy, but there are many documented cases of, like you're saying, these workers or people who live right next to these high EMF areas.
They called it the Spanish flu.
Yeah, I think it's called like neuroastenia or something like that as well, right? But yeah, the Spanish
There's a direct
flu.
correlation to global pandemics and outbreaks and symptoms with every new vibration or frequency that's been released.
That's very interesting.
Telegraphs, radio, electric fields, television, cell phones. Every time there's a new frequency released into the general public, there historically it's documented.
Yeah,
that there is a medical outbreak as our bodies adapt to what am I going to do with this? What do I do with this? And it's been called a lot of different things over the years, but there's a direct relationship between vibrations and frequencies that we're exposed to, EMFs, man-made, non-native EMFs, and how bodies react to that. Yeah,
and I think in The Invisible Rainbow, he writes a lot about that, which is a cool. If no one's ever got into EMFs or wanted to learn more, I think that's the best overview for like all the history of electrical technology. Absolutely. As well as the societal health effects from Furstenberg, I think his name is.
I think my copy is down here somewhere. I'm not sure where it is.
Yeah, my copy. Actually, I have it right here. Oh, wow. There we go. It's a great book.
You go.
So my question, and you just brought up a good point, and there's a lot of things I want to table for other questions like dirty electricity and getting to importance of turning things off, not just powering them down. But first, something you just mentioned is adapting. Our bodies have this ability to adapt, or at least that's what we call it, right? But really, is that something you think that we can actually adapt to, or it's more so we're just living in a less optimal state? And kind of alluding to what you're saying is the more of this toxic threshold we have, the higher prevalence of chronic disease at an earlier age we're going to see.
Yeah, there's a lot contributing to that. I was listening to somebody just recently, and when they were at medical school, the guy who founded the medical school was old and still teaching, and they had a case of, I think it was lung cancer came in, And the guy who founded the medical school called all the students and said, you all need to be here and pay attention, because this will probably be the last case. This could be the only case of lung cancer you ever see. It was that rare back then that this doctor, at the end of his medical career, had seen maybe one other case before this case. And he told his students, you may never see another one, so pay attention. Think how common, how prevalent that is today. And that is just an indication of dozens, if not hundreds of diseases that used to be very rare. When they did occur, they only occurred in older people that are now becoming more and more common, not only in old people, but more and more common in younger and younger people. There are many, many things that contribute to that. I'm not saying it's just EMF, but there's lots of indications that people's EMF exposure, if it doesn't cause it, it is definitely exacerbating those conditions, making them worse. And we have seen miraculous turnarounds with people who have turned off the electricity at night, and all of a sudden their symptoms subside, go away, and instead of getting, as I said earlier, a little bit worse every day, they start getting a little bit better. So again, in different people, it is the cause. In other people's, it's a contributing factor. It's the elephant in the room. And when we deal with that, it's amazing how many other things seem to get taken care of at the same time. So,
well, I mean, I've always looked at it as sort of like, I mean, a lot of people use this analogy of sort of like a bucket of toxins that your body takes on every single day. And once the bucket starts to overflow, you can only empty it so fast.
Yeah.
And I look at EMF as one of those things, non-native EMF as being one of those things that's always being added to the bucket, generally speaking, if you're a normal human being living in a modern environment. And it's something that is oftentimes never being emptied out on a daily basis just due to modern living. And so for me, one of the best, I think, examples that everyone will make fun of me for in my family and my friends knowingly is there's a show called Better Call Saul, which for people that don't know is sort of the breakaway from Breaking Bad, which was a very popular show about meth and all this like crazy drug stuff. But in Better Call Saul, the main character's brother has EMF sensitivity. And in the show, it's played off as a complete joke. Like, this guy is crazy. Like, there's like all this stuff. But when I saw that, it was only about a year or so ago that I started watching the show, even though it's been out for like several years. I was like, this is like a calling card to stuff that goes on that everybody's dealing with, maybe not to that degree. And one of the questions I had just brought up from that show was, I mean, there's so many factors, so we can never like label it down to one. But why is it that some people seem to exacerbate extreme sensitivity to non-native EMF versus, for instance, there's so many factors. But for instance, I think I have a much higher sensitivity than my brother, who is subjected to way more EMF than I am. He
Sure.
lives in the bedroom where the Wi-Fi is on constantly and sleeps right next to it. And so, of course, there's many factors, but I love to see, I mean, you've worked with seen so many things. What would you say like contributes to these certain hypersensitivities over others?
Yeah, good question. So, yeah, we're all affected by different things in different ways. I love peanuts. I can sit here and eat a packet of peanuts and have no negative side effects whatsoever. There's other people who are so allergic to peanuts. I mean, if they're in the same room as one, just the vapor of the peanuts in the room causes them to have a reaction. So, but also there's that side of things. But also your body mass, the amount of metals in your body, which obviously are going to react to the electromagnetic fields that you're exposed to. But everybody's body mass is different. We have different shape and size antennas to pick up different frequencies. So your body is going to pick up different frequencies than my body to begin with. And then you've got the whole sensitivity issue like you do with food allergies. Some people seem to be allergic to everything, and other people, I'm not aware of being allergic to anything at all when it comes to food. So all of these things play in. So we're all uniquely unique. And the body acts as an antenna. We are, as babies, 70% water. I'm told that as we grow up and get older, older people might be 60 or 50% water. So that's a factor. But as everybody knows, water is very, very conductive. Our DNA, there's lots of people that think our DNA is in and of itself tiny, tiny antennas that are designed to pick up certain frequencies from the environment in which we grew up in. So again, different parts of our body, different cells react to different frequencies. So as we get, not just the natural frequencies, which obviously we'd die without. I know there's certain frequencies from, that we can be exposed to that are natural, that are detrimental. But man-made frequencies, as we get up into the millimeter waves, they're affecting us in ways that, people 2 or 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years, they were never exposed to those frequencies. And there's consequences to that. I'm sure there's lots of people who don't like microwave ovens. They won't even have one in the house, or if they do, they hardly ever use it. If they do use it occasionally, they'll walk away from it, wait for it to finish, and then they come back to it. Do you know what frequency a microwave oven uses?
Not a specific number.
2.4 gigahertz.
This is the same as Wi-Fi and your phone.
Wi-Fi,
right?
If you look at your Wi-Fi router, if you go to your phone and you're picking up your Wi-Fi, you've got a choice between 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz. So your Wi-Fi router, people say, oh, no, I wouldn't have a microwave oven in my house. Do you have a Wi-Fi router? Oh, yeah. Where is it? On my bedside table, on my desk, 4 feet from me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting next to a microwave oven that's on 24/7 unless you turn it off. Now, you can heat a cup of coffee in 2 or 3 minutes. But your microwave oven on your desk, your Wi-Fi router, is on for hours and hours and hours, and you're only a few feet from it. Do you know what frequency Bluetooth is?
Same thing.
2.4 gigahertz. And people have buds in their ears that are communicating with each other. There's no bone here. And this one is talking to this one through your head. What's right slap bang in the middle between these 2 points? The pineal gland.
Oh, yeah. It's true.
Yeah. I mean,
it's wild.
Yeah, it's ironic, really. I guess people just maybe got the microwave bug early because it's been around for a while and they just can't do without their modern conveniences. But this kind of gets into a lot of the important nuance. Maybe you're mentioning frequencies, you're mentioning distance, you're mentioning power, intensity.
All very important. Yes.
All very important. And on your site too. And you're talking about RF, and then we also talked about ELF. So on your site, and you have this really nice image as well. It's saying you think that most of the damage is coming from the electric field or the ELF range because of the duration and the proximity in our homes. But maybe you could talk a little bit about what you think is really important for people to be aware of, and then how do they mitigate that, right? Like, why is distance so important? Why is power important? And how do they kind of mitigate it? What are some easy ways?
Okay, yeah. Well, let's start with the one that probably everybody is aware of, which is the cell phone signal, microwaves. So whether it's your microwave oven, whether it's your Wi-Fi router, your cell phone, your smart meter, your Bluetooth headsets, your Bluetooth mouse, your Bluetooth keyboard, that's there all the time. So when I talk on the phone, my phone is receiving a signal from the nearest cell phone tower. Now, I'm not worried about the cell phone tower that's half a mile away talking to my phone. Even if I'm talking with if I've got my phone here, it is broadcasting a signal 360 degrees through my head, and the cell phone tower might be over there. I'm not worried about the cell phone tower talking to my cell phone. I'm worried about the cell phone in my hand that's broadcasting a signal that's powerful enough to reach that cell phone tower half a mile away. But the difference between this and this is huge. Distance is your friend. So that's cell phones. So how do you deal with that? Well, you never do this. You don't keep it on your body. If you read the instructions, it says this should never, ever come in contact with your body. You need to keep it away from you at all times. Preferably don't hold it, put it on the table in front of you and talk on speakerphone. That's one thing you can do. Definitely put it on airplane mode at night. Do not, actually, I'd turn it off at night, turn it back on in the morning. Never, ever, ever use it while it's plugged in and charging. I've got a photograph on the website somewhere that I'm not getting any electric field from this. I might be getting Bluetooth, I might be getting Wi-Fi, but I'm not getting any electric field from this because it's running on battery. It's DC. If I plug it in and charge it, if I'm sitting at 800 millivolts right now, simply because of everything else around me, if I plug in my phone, my body voltage is going to go up to 10,000 millivolts. When I'm using my iPad, which I'm talking on now, it's not going to give any electric field whatsoever. Obviously, there's a Wi-Fi signal, a cell signal, but there's no electric field. If I plug in my iPad and charge it and touch the iPad, my body voltage would go, if I'm sitting here and I plug it in, my body voltage would go from 800 up to 2,500 millivolts. If I touch the iPad to use it, which is how you use an iPad, it's how you use a laptop, 40,000 millivolts because it's plugged in to an ungrounded cord. How do I avoid EMFs? Never use it charging. Don't use the iPad while it's charging. And again, people are worried about Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, but they completely ignore the electromagnetic field. And the reason 60 hertz is so bad for us is because it's so close to the vibration and the frequency, and it harmonizes with the natural frequencies of the body in a very negative way. And it's just like sound. If you play a discord, a note that's not in harmony with the other notes, it's like, ugh. Well, what are electromagnetic frequencies doing that are not in harmony with our body's electromagnetic frequency? They're causing a disharmony, dis-ease, which manifests as disease. It's all in the words. It's right there.
It's so fascinating because I feel like so much, and this kind of goes for sometimes the health space as a whole, but so much of it's like just smack in your face once you realize it. Like it's all there. The warnings are all there. Sometimes like there's actually even on your iPhone, like if you actually dig in deep enough, there's like a whole thing talking about not putting it next to your head. Like all of these things, they're out there. Like they say it. It's just kind of hidden in plain sight, which is really interesting as well. And like it's very fascinating to me from a psychological perspective how abrasive people are to doing things like turning off the Wi-Fi at night or not putting their phone on airplane mode or turning it off at night when they're not using it. They're like, no, I'm not going to do that. And it's really, it's just so fascinating. I mean, I've gone through a whole journey, so I've come out on the other side, but it's just very interesting because even if you can't convince them of something, it's like, for some reason, it's attacking them in some way to like turn off the Wi-Fi at night when you're not using it. And so it's like so
it's hard to convince some people. I mean, you can tell people that, having a piece of pizza once a week or a hot dog or a hamburger occasionally, your body can handle it, but you can't live on that food. It's not nutritious, and there's so many preservatives and chemicals. It's a lousy diet, but that's not to say having a hot dog, occasionally, or a hamburger or a piece of pizza. I mean, your body can handle it, and it's if we can maximize the good stuff most of the time and minimize the negative stuff as much as we have control over. I have no control over the cell towers in my neighborhood. You may or may not have control over whether you have a smart meter on the side of your house or not. Depends where you live. But you have absolute 100% control of the EMF in your home. And in-home originating EMF is by far the majority of the EMF that everybody is exposed to. So in addition to the RF, which we just talked about, you've got magnetic fields. So anytime you've got a spinning motor, hairdryer, electric fan, your refrigerator when it kicks on, the microwave, anytime you've got a spinning motor, you've got a magnetic field that's being thrown out. I used to have a thing here that I could spin, and it would light up a Gauss meter, spin the magnet, and then I hold the Gauss meter here, and I run this up and down my back, and the Gauss meter goes off. So that magnetic field is going straight through my body. And that's what magnetic fields do. That's why EMF is important, because it does go through our bodies. And I use that to describe, I wish I had it here now, but I don't know where it is, sorry. So there's magnetic fields. You also get magnetic fields from wiring errors in your home, and from, if you've got Romex, the white wire, the plastic wire that everybody's familiar with, you've got the power going one way and the power coming back the other way. Well, there is a magnetic field there, but the one going this way is neutralized by the one coming this way. So they cancel each other out. So when you've got power lines running through your town and your city, there is no neutral up there, or the power and the neutral are separated. So you're getting a massive magnetic field off of power lines. And there's a direct correlation. Nobody even refutes it anymore between magnetic fields and childhood leukemia. There's nobody even argues about it anymore.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to that, the big one, which most people aren't even aware of, the elephant in the room, as I call it, is the electric field. And now we get down into the, ELF, which is the extra low frequencies. And that's because our bodies run on those frequencies. And so there's a direct relationship between those fields affecting, what our body's trying to do. It's a miracle that we're still alive. It's just a miracle of design. You can argue who designed it, but nonetheless, it's a miracle that we are so resilient. But what we consider to be normal, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier ago, what we consider to be normal is just what we're used to. That doesn't mean it's optimal. What could optimal look like? And as these deteriorations of our health happen gradually, and so we just feel the way that we feel and think that's normal, or it's just part of growing old. It's just part of old age. Doesn't have to be. It's just what we've accepted.
And I think that's part of the message of just like messaging that to people, that like what's common isn't necessarily normal. And I think if you look at history, like we sort of mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, what was common wasn't even common not that long ago. And so it behooves us to sort of like look at history.
Short period of time, and our body just hasn't had a chance to adapt.
Yeah. So we were sort of talking about earlier, just before that, a little bit about all the things that are going on in our house all the time, plugging things in. I sort of want to get into the importance of measuring. How can we measure? How can we check our outlets for groundedness and all that stuff? There's obviously devices we can use, but why is it important to measure those things, and sort of how can we do that?
Well, because you just don't know unless you measure. You can't see or hear. Some people can feel EMF. I have a friend who is so sensitive that if I've got my cell phone on, he doesn't know I've even got one in my back pocket. But he says, your cell phone's in your back pocket and it's on and I can feel it. Please turn it off if you want to talk to me. He can't get within 10 feet without it affecting him. So when we can see it, and, someplace you go outside, why do people get out in the redwoods and to the beach and go out in the boonies and, the dead zone, and feel so good? Because there's no EMF. You can measure it with something like this is an E-pen. So my iPad's not plugged in, so it's not going off. But this is. So as I move into the field, the pen goes off. So now I can see it and hear it. So this alerts me to the fact that there is an electric field around. Now, then I can measure it with a body voltage kit. And what I do is I plug in a ground cord that goes in here. All electricity, all electric fields follow the path of least resistance. So when I plug this end into the ground outlet of the house, having tested to make sure it's safe with a circuit tester, because I don't want to plug into a ground that's got power on it because of a wiring error. So I want to make sure I'm safe. So I do that. Now, the field that my body is acting as an antenna for is going to follow the path of least resistance to ground. So when I give it a path of least resistance to ground, through the meter, I can measure the strength of the field. That's how this works. So, and I don't have it plugged in. So the Building Biology Institute recommend at night a body voltage reading of no concern is 10 millivolts. Of slight concern is 10 to 100 millivolts. Anything above 1,000 millivolts is considered to be of extreme concern. Most people's bedrooms, you take a body voltage meter, lay in your bed, 2,000, 3,000 millivolts. I've measured 2 bedrooms recently that were 6,000 and 7,000 millivolts. Flip off the breakers, goes from 3,000 millivolts down to below 100. Makes a huge, huge difference.
Are you interested in 100% grass-fed, grass-finished bison meat? I'm excited to be a partner with Falls Family Ranches. Based in Wyoming, Falls Family Ranches is raising high-quality bison meat the way nature intended. As a native large ruminant of North America, bison is one of the most nutrient-dense foods you can consume. If you're interested in trying out their bison boxes, use code Tristan, TRISTAN 10 for 10% off your first order.
Yeah, so I just want to get into that a little bit because I'm not as familiar with the body voltage kit. And my question is, if you're just standing like on the earth, you're going to have some difference in potential. And it's actually, more could be argued as a good thing because it's coming from the earth. But here we're saying that the higher the voltage is worse. And, you're saying like a cell phone, iPad can get you up to like 10, 20, 40 volts, which I'm assuming you're just inheriting that from the battery of that device, really, that drop in potential. But maybe you could talk about that more. Or I'm just curious because I haven't used the body voltage kit yet. I want to get one from the guys at Dr. EMF, but I've been waiting.
Okay. Well, they get them from me, so
yeah, I know they get them from you. So I should just get one off the site.
Well, yeah, use their code and get a 10% discount because they're affiliates of ours. So yeah, anything on battery you don't need to worry about. It's the AC voltage. So that's the difference between my iPad that's not plugged in, not even getting a field, as I showed you here. It didn't even go off. But when I get next to this AC field, the fan next to me is not turned on, but it's putting out a field because it's plugged in. What was the question?
just like that a higher voltage is worse. And I was just saying, I've done some multimeter readings, like connecting, just standing on the earth, like standing on the ground.
Okay.
You see like a higher difference in potential, but that's
so now,
different
now you're getting
circumstance.
grounding, which is I'm going to get really controversial here and probably piss off an awful lot of people in the grounding community. First of all, let me start by saying grounding is amazing. The purpose of grounding, earthing, outside in nature is to reconnect with nature. Our body runs on DC voltage. Mother Earth is DC voltage. When we go outside in nature, bare feet on the ground, our bodies are synchronizing with the natural frequencies of the earth. Negative ions are coming up. Any positive charges that we have, because our bodies don't only act as an antenna, they also act as a capacitor. A capacitor is something that stores energy. So we actually store the energy that we're exposed to throughout the day. So when we ground, the capacitor is being dissipated. That positive ions, which are bad for you, go down into the ground, and the negative ions from the ground, negative ions are good for you, reverse of positive and negative terminology as we normally use it. And so you are coming back into homeostasis. You're coming back into balance when you ground outside. So the principle of grounding is it makes you part of the circuit. So when you ground indoors with a grounding cord, I am making myself part of the circuit. But I'm sitting in a 60 hertz electric field. So think of a bird sitting on a high-powered line. They're all lined up, 25,000 volts going through that line. They don't care because they're not grounded. Little squirrel comes along, he's standing on something, and he puts his paw on the high-powered line. We now have cooked squirrel because the squirrel was grounded, because that voltage now was flowing through his body, which isn't designed to take 25,000 volts, and we have a cooked squirrel. So when I ground inside, I am making my body part of the circuit, and the 60 hertz electric field is now flowing through my body continuously. Not good. Grounding outside, becoming part of nature, very good. Grounding inside, becoming part of your household electrical system, that's 60 hertz, not good. And a lot of people start grounding. Works for some people, probably because even though it's not good, it's an improvement to the situation they were previously in, so they see an improvement. But a lot of people start grounding inside, plugging into the household ground, or even throwing a wire out the window. That long 50-foot copper cord is now an antenna that's picking up radio frequencies that you are now physically exposed to. So these are all things that are out there that people don't realize. And it's what are you connected to, and the way that you're connected to it, how much of an impact it's having on your body and on your system. And quite simply, the pineal gland in the middle of your head, the third eye, right here, is the reason it's called the third eye is because it's made up of rods and cones, just like the back of your eye is. But it also happens to be very, very sensitive to EMF. So one of the signals for the pineal gland, which is responsible for manufacturing and releasing the melatonin, one of its signals it gets every day is when the big ball goes by, the sun sets, no more EMF, release the melatonin. That takes a couple of hours. But for people who have replaced the natural EMF with the non-native EMF from their laptops, their computers, their phones, their toasters, their coffee pots, their electric blanket that they're laying underneath, those are horrendous. The pineal gland doesn't, it still thinks it's daytime. So it's not that it doesn't release any melatonin, but it doesn't release enough, so you don't get a good night restful, restorative sleep. So there's actual biology behind this, the melatonin hypothesis. plus, of course, the light frequencies, which we touched on. But if you turn off those circuits at night when you don't need them anyway, your body has a chance to heal and detox.
That's super fascinating because that's something I've always wondered about, like the grounding inside versus outside. And me and Tristan kind of go back and forth on this a lot. And we sort of had the same mindset of like grounding inside seems a little bit sketchy to me. And so that's sort of like, just to recap that section a little bit, is like,
well, if you turn off the AC field,
then you can do it.
Then you can ground inside. But you know, but with an AC field, you are making a connection between that AC field and the ground. And now that AC is flowing through your body, through your foot, the grounding pad on your bed, or the grounding sheets, or the grounding pillowcase. That AC field is now flowing through your body all night long.
Mm-hmm. So if you live in an apartment building, kids, don't ground inside. Don't plug in anything. It's not going to work.
Well, unless your condition is so horrible to begin with, it might actually, in your case,
be somewhat net benefit.
Give you an advantage. But yeah, I would say rule of thumb, and this is very controversial. There's lots of people who disagree with me on this, but because there's lots of people making lots of money selling grounding pads and grounding devices. Grounding outside, if you can watch the sun rise and the sunset every day, look at the sun, 10, 15 minutes, bare feet on the ground, probably one of totally free, doesn't cost you a dime, get at least 10 feet away from the house so that there's no electric field from your house, make sure there's no ground wires or overhead wires. Probably one of the most beneficial things you can do for your health.
Yeah, and that's fantastic overview, because it's just, you can't cheat nature. It just doesn't work like that. Nature cannot be outsmarted. You might get a benefit, like you're saying. There's like a good, and then there's a best, or there's like an okay. So yeah, if someone's really sick, they might still benefit from getting free electrons, even if it's at a 60 hertz frequency. So that's where there's nuance in all these topics.
Sure.
And I think people need to value the connection, the real connection with nature. But another controversial topic is, and something you've already talked about a little bit, is dirty electricity in general. And I think a lot of people in the EMF space kind of highlight this as like the end all be all for some reason. And for me, I really love your website because it talks about, dirty electricity. Like, electrical engineers don't even use this term. They talk about power quality and EMI. I am an electrical engineer, and that's 100% true. And I've done a lot of work in EMI and power quality, although I'm not the most technical role anymore. But to me, it never made sense why everyone was talking about dirty electricity, why everyone was talking about like filtering these things. And then I looked into some of these filters, and we were talking, Anthony, the other week, how they're extremely expensive, and you need to spend like $800 to like $1,000 to get all the filters in your house. And then you're only handling that dirty electricity piece, not anything else really. So I guess maybe talk about that a little bit. How important really is dirty electricity? And maybe then we can get into the EMF safe solution, and why that's, you think, the best way to, mitigate electric fields and overall EMF exposure.
Sure. Dirty electricity, what's called dirty electricity it's a power quality issue. Our switch mode power supplies, which is the phone plug that you use to recharge your phone, is converting the 120 60 hertz AC down into 5 volts or 12 volts DC, depending upon your appliance, maybe 18 volts for an iPad or a laptop. So in the conversion process, converting the AC to DC, that inversion creates dirty electricity, which are harmonics and artifacts of the 60 hertz that are on the part of the power now. Not that you get clean electricity these days coming in from the power company. When you share a transformer with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 other houses in your neighbors in a cul-de-sac, all of the dirty electricity that they are creating going into the power supply is coming into your home. So if your neighbors, you may not have solar panels or a pool pump. But if your next door neighbors do, that's creating dirty electricity. Those harmonics are riding in on the electricity coming into your house, plus all the dirty electricity that's being created by switch mode power supplies, variable speed motors in pool pumps, well pumps, mini split heaters. All of those things create dirty electricity. Dimmer switches where you're, adjusting the power levels. All of that creates dirty electricity. Now, those frequencies, some people are particularly sensitive to, admittedly. But as far as the percentage of the amount of EMF that you are exposed to on a daily basis, it's probably 2 or 3, maybe in a really bad case, 5% of the 60 hertz AC field is the power coming, riding on the wires in your house, coming into your devices. It's a tiny percentage. And you can spend, I don't know where you can buy a whole house filter for $800 other than from us, because that's our heavy duty one. The competition out there, they sell them for $1,200-$1,300 for their light duty one and $1,600 for the heavy duty one. And that's filtering out maybe 85% of the DE in the home, but it leaves the 60 hertz there. And the 60 hertz is doing more harm to your body than the dirty electricity was in the first place. But again, people make a lot of money by selling these devices. We sell ours for half the price of theirs. Independent tests show that ours works just as well, if not better than theirs does. And we sell it for half the price. I mean, we can do that because it's part of the cutoff switch. But there's lots of people making lots of money selling these devices. And the idea that you can filter out the DE and you've solved your EMF problem is doing people a great disservice. The only way to deal with EMF is to remove the source. And in your home, it's as simple as turning off the circuit. You just turn off the circuit, kill the circuit at the panel. There's no electric field. There's no magnetic field. There's no dirty electricity, and there's no radio frequency on that circuit. Use flat screen TV, anything else that might be causing, sort of smart device. If you kill the circuit, you've killed the DE. You've killed the electric field, the magnetic field, and the radio frequency. You have 100% control over that. So why not just flip the breakers? Well, there's photographs on our website. Fortunately, it's very rare. But by flipping the breakers on and off all the time, that is a mechanical device that's designed to trip if there's a power surge from outside to protect your home and all of the devices in your home, or if there's a short circuit in the home, somebody drops a hairdryer in the bathtub or whatever it happens to be. That switch is designed to flip and cut off the power. By flipping it on and off, you can weaken the mechanical parts inside the switch because they're not actually switch rated. And so when you need it to operate as a safety feature, it doesn't do that. So it can be very dangerous to flip the breakers every day over a long period of time. For a week or two, it's not that big a deal. So that's why we make the EMF safe switch. It's a relays that go next to your breaker box. We wire that circuit through the relay, just like you push a button to unlock your car door, sends out a pulse, unlocks the car, hit the button, it locks the car. You hit a button by the side of your bed, kills all the circuits. You sleep like a baby, like you're camping in the redwoods. Hit the button in the morning. The lights come back on, the circuits come back on, you live your life. It's that simple. It's so simple. It's so easy, so convenient. That's the solution to in-home EMF. Now, as far as your home office is concerned, you want to physically move things as far away from you as possible. If you can turn off the circuit to that room, even better. Run a shielded power cord in to plug your computer in. If you have a laptop, just charge it up away from you at night. Run it on battery during the day. Then you have no electric field to worry about. Keep the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth turned off. Maybe connect for 2 or 3 minutes. Once an hour, get your emails, send out your emails, receive your texts and things like that. And if you have to be online and okay, fine. I mean, let's just keep it to an absolute minimum. If you don't need to actually be live online like we are now, turn it off. And so, again, you can, by a few simple, straightforward tricks, your printer doesn't need to be plugged in. Just unplug it. The paper shredder doesn't need to be down by your feet plugged in 24/7 when you use it for 5 minutes once a week. Unplug the thing. Put it on the other side of the room. These are very simple things. We talk about them on the website. If you go to the office page, we talk about how to do all of these things. We've got a page on grounding. Again, explains all of this and how it works. liveemfsafe.com. I'm sure you probably put the website address up on the screen from time to time, but I don't get to see that. So, it's not difficult. If you know it's there, you can identify the field, you can measure it. You're now equipped. You can make an informed decision, and it's easy to mitigate, and it's easy to sell if what you did worked or not. It's not difficult. It's very easy, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic because, I mean, elimination of the source is really like the ultimate way. Distance is your friend. We can talk about shielding maybe in a bit, but if you eliminate the power source, and I think it's important to, again, reiterate, turning things off versus cutting the full power is a big difference because an electric field is volts per meter. So even if you have no current, so it's plugged into the outlet, but it's off, you still have voltage and you still have an electric field. So you need to actually power it off. So I think that's the big, takeaway there. But just getting on the EMF safe solution, how does someone go about ordering this? Because, I looked on your site and you got a few different options, and I'm assuming you want to work with your electrician if you don't have any electrical experience. Kind of
Right.
What's the way people go about doing this, just to give people kind of a quick walkthrough, because it is a little bit technical, I will say.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get a body voltage meter, so you lay in your bed, you take a reading. It helps to do this with somebody else. They turn off the breakers to the house, so now you've got a reading in your house with nothing on. So that's your baseline. So turn everything back on again. Turn off the breaker to the room, and this will go from 3,000 down to 1,000 maybe. Maybe the lights went out when you turned off the plugs. Maybe they didn't. If they didn't go out, find the breaker for the lights. If your head of your bed is up against an inside wall and the room next door didn't go out when you flipped the breaker, then you've got another wire running through that wall for that room next door. So you need to turn off that breaker. So you keep turning off the breakers. Maybe it's one. Occasionally we get lucky and it's just one circuit. More often than not, it's 2, 3, 4. Sometimes it's 8 or 12. You turn off those, and then you order the EMF safe switch, PQ1, a NP1, which is a neutral and power disconnect, turns off one circuit. NP2 turns off 2 circuits. NP4 turns off 4 circuits. Pretty straightforward. So you want to find out how many circuits you need to turn off in your home by measuring, identify those circuits, and then you order an EMF safe switch. We can throw up a photograph maybe of that goes next to your breaker panel. You run those circuits through the relays, and then you have a remote control. You hit the button, kills the circuits. You've now got, instead of 2,000, 3,000, 7,000 millivolts in your bedroom, which you used to have, you've now got hopefully below 100 millivolts, maybe down to 50 or 30 or 10 if you can get there. And so now you're sleeping in an EMF mitigated sleep sanctuary environment, and your body can heal and detox. Your immune system can do what it was designed to do because it doesn't have all the interference getting in the way. So now it can take all of that energy it was having to fight the fields. When the fields go away, it can use that energy to fight the disease, to fix the and heal the wound, or whatever it is, to detoxify your brain and your lungs and your liver and your kidneys, and clean this thing up, because it's now got the energy and the resources to do it. It's pretty simple. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, there's just, like I said at the very beginning, there's just so much misconception, I think, about what actually works. And you see all these, maybe we can sort of talk about what the difference between what we're talking about here and the idea of, like, I think a lot of these remediation products that you slap on everything, and they sort of, like, for instance, like the little sticker things you see for the phones, they just like, it's funny too, because sometimes you reach out to the people selling them, and they'll send you the data. And even on the data, which is the data they collected, but it'll show like the signal block and then just come back after. So you're like getting this little spike buffer for 1 millisecond, and then it comes back. So
forgive me a minute. I have to plug in my iPad. So.
Oh, you're totally good.
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
Really?
I'll probably have to do that soon enough for my laptop, because just the nature of old batteries.
Yeah. So about the stickers. So you put a sticker on your phone, and the question is, does your phone still work?
Yes.
So the electric field, the EMF coming from the tower, and the EMF that's being broadcast by your phone is still there. Mm-hmm. If you have very expensive scientific equipment, if you have an oscilloscope, you can measure the fields in your home, in your wiring, in your electricity. They can measure the field in the atmosphere, the radio frequency coming in from the cell towers. You bring in one of those devices, and absolutely nothing changes. The strength of the signal doesn't change. The nature of the signal, the quality of the wave, the sine wave, nothing changes. There is no scientific equipment that can show that those things do anything whatsoever. Now, people claim that they're, the blood before and the blood afterwards, which is kind of ironic, because most of those tests are being done. The cell phone was in front of them when they took the blood the first time. Is it the EMF in the home? Is it the EMF from the computer? I mean, what's going on there? Now, and people buy these other machines, these boxes that have no power in them whatsoever.
Yeah.
We call them the crystal chandelier crowd, or a copper coil that is somehow magically going to neutralize the effect or harmonize the negative effect of the EMF that you are being exposed to. Do the lights still work? Does your toaster still work? Does your TV still work? Does your cell phone still work? You still have EMF. And the EMF is exactly the same as it was before. So if you had a powered device putting out some kind of Tesla field, is it possible that that's communicating with your body on a cellular level, because that is a natural frequency, so your body doesn't react as adversely to the man-made EMF, because it's recognizing this, like, I don't know what that stuff is, danger, Will Robinson, panic, panic, panic. And then all of a sudden you introduce this natural vibration, this natural frequency, and the body goes, I know what that is. So I'm going with that. So our body doesn't react quite as adversely to the man-made EMF as it did before. With a powered device, that is within the realms of possibility. But with an unpowered device, it is physically, scientifically impossible for a sticker on your phone, yes, I have one, to make any difference. But for $10, just because I have this on my phone doesn't mean I have the phone next to my head. It means I minimize it and mitigate it as much as I physically can. I still, don't have my iPad plugged in except when I absolutely have to. For $10, if when I'm out and about, it helps something, okay, fine.
I think that's an important point. Oh yeah.
$1,000? A $5,000 pendant?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to miraculously, that has no power in it whatsoever. It's just a crystal. It's going to miraculously protect my body on a cellular level. There was an experiment done with rodents in a lab. Both groups were exposed to electromagnetic fields. One of them had some kind of funky device, a neutralizer, a harmonizer. Those mice, rodents, whatever they were, ran around happy, weren't concerned. Fine. The ones that didn't have the device, that were exposed to the same frequencies, were all shielded in the corner as physically as far away from the device as possible. On the surface, that would say, see, the harmonizer was neutralizing the field, and the mice were happy and they were safe. There's only one problem. The mice with the device that were running around happy lived half as long as the mice that tried to get away from it. They didn't have the neutralizer. They didn't have the harmonizer. They stayed as physically far away from it as they possibly could and lived twice as long. So even if these devices are doing something in the short term, are they negating the medium and long-term effects of cellular damage on our bodies? The indication is they're not.
Yeah, I mean, from a simple, like, common sense standpoint, for me, how I think about it is, we talked about ELFs, 60 hertz from the electrical grid. We talked about 2.4 gigahertz from Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, RF frequencies. You could throw in radio communication in the megahertz range, in the kilohertz range, switch mode power supplies, things like that. How is one device going to harmonize the entire EMR band? And then what is it doing to the beneficial frequencies then? What is it doing to sunlight? You know, there's so many questions that it just is not possible. It's if someone came out and said this device only harmonizes 2.4 gigahertz, I'd be like, okay, maybe. You know, if there's some filtering, if it is powered, like you're saying, but there's no way it can filter the whole EMR band. It just, to me.
But scientifically, it's physically impossible. You have to do something to that frequency, to that signal at the source, to change it. But the oscilloscope shows that the power and the frequency, you still got 60 hertz. Now, if it's the frequency of 60 hertz that's doing the harm and the damage, you still got the electricity running through the wires in your house. The AC electric field that you're exposed to you still got that 60 hertz vibration, that 60 hertz frequency doing whatever it's doing. Just because you've got another frequency in the background of some frequency that's, it's not negating the effect of the 60 hertz. The 60 hertz is still there.
Yeah.
So I'm very concerned for these people that are spending all of this money on these devices, thinking that they are, now there's a placebo effect, but thinking that they've been, spent the money invested in these, $100, $500, $1,000 stickers and devices. But the irony is, they say, well, it puts out a quantum field. But, this device only works within 10 feet, but this device works within 50 feet, and this device works within 100 feet. The nature of a quantum field is not affected by distance. So if there's one quantum device in the middle of my city, one person's got one in the middle of the city. Why doesn't it affect everybody in the city? Because quantum fields are not affected by distance.
Yeah, I think I'd like whoever's selling that to explain QED to us, and then we can maybe believe them a little bit more, because it's a bit complex. But I'm curious as well, maybe wrapping up here is, we talk, obviously EMF Safe is focused on electric field, ELFs, but really this has been around, for a while, and it is encouraging if more people are potentially in the future going to go to like a DC home, have an AC DC conversion at the line. But really, most of the progress in the past 2 decades, most of the technology that's being invented, being more pervasive in our society, is of the RF range. And 5G has pushed that frequency higher, and 6G is going to push that even higher into, we're getting into like the infrared band of frequencies now, which is, it's crazy in terms of what that means. Are you concerned about this? Because now with 5G, there's more receivers, like in shorter periods of distance, there's more towers everywhere. To me, I'm concerned because it's just the accumulation effect, right? Like there's just more towers everywhere. It's higher frequency, which is debatable how much that has an impact, but can penetrate deeper technically. At least I know that. And we're just going to continue moving forward or moving up the band. What are your thoughts there?
That's the irony. First of all, 5G is not 5 gigahertz. It's fifth generation technology.
Yeah.
And fourth generation technology. So T-Mobile, fifth generation cellular network system, uses 600 megahertz, which is a lower frequency than LTE uses. So 4G LTE is at a higher frequency than some of the 5G. So 5G isn't a frequency. It is a technology. Now, AT&T are using 3 to 4 gigahertz. There's some other companies, Verizon, in some city centers, in some football stadiums, they're using 20 gigahertz. The legislation
allows them to currently go up to like 30 or 60, right? I think, but obviously they don't.
Actually, 100. I think
100?
They can go up to maybe 300 gigahertz. But think about the difference between the 2.4 gigahertz and the 5 gigahertz on your Wi-Fi router. Now, I lived in a building a few years back, and we had concrete walls. I could use the 5 gigahertz in the room that the Wi-Fi router was and get twice the speed, twice the download, great connection. But if I went into the next room, the 5G signal wouldn't go through that concrete wall. But I could go 2 rooms away through 2 concrete walls, and I could still get the 2.4 gigahertz. So it was half the speed, but it had much greater penetration than the 5 gigahertz signal. Now we're talking about 8 gigahertz, 10 gigahertz, 20 gigahertz, 60 gigahertz, 100 gigahertz. Massive increase in speed. But those signals do not travel the distance, which is why they're having to move the towers every few hundred yards. Line of sight. And why they're cutting down all the trees, because a tree will stop a 20 gigahertz signal. A 20 gigahertz signal won't penetrate the walls of your house. It won't go through your clothes. It can't go through a leaf.
Yeah, so I had this epiphany the other day because I was researching about RF signals on NASA's website or something, and actually didn't realize, this is another reason why ELFs are so bad, is that when ELFs are created, they pretty much are never destroyed. They never dissipate in the atmosphere. So the higher frequency signals, and I think the cutoff is in the very high frequency range, so we're talking the maybe tens of megahertz, actually can escape the ionosphere and go into space and fully dissipate. So then I was like, oh, well then maybe as we trend higher and kind of in line with what you're saying now, this is actually a good thing, potentially. But then at the same time, they're having to install way more receivers and the like. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. I didn't realize that until I think 2 weeks ago when I researched it.
Yeah, and also the 5G signal, it's 4G is like shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you receive the signal, if you've got a 5G device, there's a 5G handshake. And so the 5G tower says, oh, you've got a 5G receiver, transmitter. I'm going to start sending you information over the 5G instead of the 4G that it probably used to make the connection in the first place. Then it can focus that beam at your device and increase the power to your device, and using pulse width modulation, so it's actually not a constant stream, but it's now firing high-powered bullets of information at your device, packets of information. And that's how I do it. Now, the penetration of those is far greater than the general signal. But if you don't have a 5G device, you don't have to worry about a 5G signal in your home, even if you've got a cell tower outside, because A, it's never going to send the 5G signal into your home unless you've got a 5G device. And there's a really good chance wouldn't get through the walls even if it wanted to. So, again, there's an unbelievable amount of misinformation about 5G. Being outside, close to a 5G tower, yeah, I'd avoid it as much as you possibly could. But because it's not penetrating your skin, but the pores on your skin, because it is a millimeter wave, can act as receivers and then pull that into your body. But it's not actually penetrating, going through you like a 4G signal. Say I can use my phone, and the cell tower can be over there, and the signal's going through my head. Mm-hmm. If I've got a 5G tower over there, I have to use it. I have to be here. And if I'm talking outside and I do this, I just lost the 5G signal because it can't get through my head. So it goes back to 4G.
So I think an easy thing for people to do is, if you're in your home, well, first off, you don't have to turn on 5G. You can keep LTE on, or you can just have your phone. I pretty much never, if I'm at home, I never have my phone on. I have my phone on airplane mode with Wi-Fi or whatever if I need it. So that's, to me, an easy solution is you could switch to 5G off, and then you can also just use the Wi-Fi and be on airplane mode.
Right. Yeah, minimize your exposure. If you're outside and you want to down to, so the question is, are you better off having 4G and making a 10-minute or a 20-minute connection to download a movie or some packet of information that you want from the web, 4G 20-minute connection, or a 5G 30-second connection? Maybe 5G is better if you do the download and then turn it off, because you've only got 30-second to a minute exposure rather than 10 to 20 minutes exposure of 4G. So
that's what I've wondered for a long time, was the differences in like the exposure length and stuff like that. That makes a lot of sense. Because at the end of the day,
a lot more work needs to be done on this. Of course, nobody's financially motivated to do it. But now that there is a 5G meter out there, just came on the market in the last few weeks or months, that measures 20 gigahertz up to, I think it's 20 to 40 gigahertz. And then there's another meter that measures from 8 up to 10. I've got one here. This one measures up to 8 gigahertz. And then there's other meters. They're pretty pricey. The one I was talking about was $1,000 for 20 to 40 or 50 gigahertz, I think is the range of that one. So, yeah, it can get pretty pricey. But as I said, unless you're in some downtown area, the odds of you having those very high band 5G fifth generation signals of 20 gigahertz, 30 gigahertz, 40 gigahertz is remote. You're not going to have that in rural areas. I've seen AT&T network is 3 to 4 gigahertz. which is lower than the Wi-Fi. Your Wi-Fi signals 5.8, 5.4, whatever, 5 point something gigahertz. And that's sitting on your desk.
Yep.
And people are worried about 5G coming in from the outside, which is a lower frequency, and they've got this thing 4 feet away from them.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I've really liked this conversation, because it kind of goes back to one of the last questions we were going to ask was what do you think is lacking in EMF education? I think that's a really big point of this whole podcast, is like controlling the environment that you're surrounded in most of the time. Because most of the conversation,
what's lacking in EMF education is education. Yeah,
it's true. And it goes back to like, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And what you know, you can do better on or ignore. You have the two choices. But it's a very interesting path. I think what was most interesting to me was that last point you were making about 5G signals, LTE signals, and stuff like that, because most of the conversations I have with friends and peers surrounds that sort of issue. And I feel like we don't pay attention enough to our environment just that's 10 feet away from us. Because that's just impacting you so much more intensely, so much more consistently. And we need to plant more trees. I'm going to surround this whole house with trees, block all that 5G.
Yeah, we're straining at gnats and swallowing camels. As far as shielding goes, this is called Reflectex. It's like a bubble wrap. You can buy it. They use it for insulation. You can buy it from Lowe's or Home Depot. It's got metallic mylar on both sides. So you've got 2 sheets of mylar that are separated. I put this between me and my microwave oven or my Wi-Fi router. I don't have one now, but when I had one, cuts 90% of the signal.
Wow.
So if you've got a Wi-Fi on in your house and you're sitting at your desk,
what's that called again?
Between you and it. And, imagine that the Wi-Fi routers are light and you want to be in the shadow. That works. Metal mesh, mosquito netting for the windows. They still sell the metal stuff. At Home Depot, Lowe's, your local hardware store. They use it for screen doors on doors so that the dog doesn't scratch through the plastic. Again, no different than the Tesla screen on the front of your microwave oven. That Sears doesn't, it's not 100%, but will significantly reduce the radio frequency. If you live in an apartment and you put this underneath your bed or on your head because your next door neighbor, you share a wall, and their Wi-Fi router might be 12 inches from your head. So you put this up, but then this is metallic. So it's going to, in reducing the radio frequency, it's going to attract the electric field.
Yeah.
So you don't ground yourself, you ground this. So the electric field that it's attracting follows the path of least resistance through the ground cord, so that, I can have my iPad plugged in now, and, I couldn't get within 2 inches of the iPad without it going off.
Wow.
That's 3.5 feet away.
Incredible.
Unplug the iPad. Actually, the cord's down there, but.
So what was that material called again?
So this is just mosquito netting you can buy from the hardware store.
Yeah.
And this is called Reflectex. Again, it's an insulation product. People put it over their windows to keep the sun out and things like that. Now, this is different from the stuff you buy for most of the stuff you buy for cars that they put on the dashboard to protect it. Most of that stuff's plastic and it doesn't stop anything. So you need to get the mylar metallic stuff that actually reduces the signal.
So apologize, my computer just died on 20%. But so this is a Faraday cage, right? So, and I was always concerned whether it needed to be grounded, which I think you answered that question. It should be. And whether if there's holes in the Faraday cage that lowers the ability of it to block the signal. And from my research, it is yes, but that doesn't mean it's still not effective. It'll just be less effective. Is that correct?
Right, but you only need a tiny hole that is going to let in. It's like, if you do use a blackout blind, and you've got a tiny little hole or tear in it, think of the amount of light that comes in through the tiny little hole.
Because they're all photons at the end of the day, right?
So with a Faraday room, for some people, that's a solution that they go to. You have to coat 100% walls, floor, ceiling, windows, doors. And that has to be grounded to remove the electric field. And you cannot have any electrical device on inside that room. If you bring a phone in, it won't work. But that phone is going to go from low power, which it probably operates on most of the time, increase the signal strength 10 to 100 times, because it is now trying to phone home. It's looking for a signal. So you take a cell phone into a Faraday room and don't turn it off. It's like bringing a light into a mirrored room. This is now powered up to the absolute maximum looking for a signal. And all of those waves are bouncing around inside that room. So if you have a Faraday room, you cannot have any electrical device plugged in inside the room whatsoever.
Yeah, and then you're blocking Schumann's resonance and what have you. So that makes sense. But that mesh then you had holes in it, right? But it's still blocking some.
Yeah, well, this is the metal mesh is it's like the screen door on your microwave oven. That stops because of the wavelength. This will stop that wavelength. So
the short wave, the shorter wavelength, because it's oscillating far more.
It's like if you got two layers, then like you got 2 layers of mylar, so much the better. But it has all to do with the frequency of the wave, that how big or small the holes need to be, and a solid metal, putting up a screen between you and your Wi-Fi. If you have to have it on, it's better to be Ethernet if you possibly can. Turn off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth if you really want to do it right.
And close. Last question. Not that this is an EMF blocking shirt, but my concern now that what I know is the same thing. You have these large holes or gaps, and then potentially the shirt's not grounded, so you're just dissipating the charge to the end of the fabric, and then it's just going to hit your body in a different place.
Well, if you're outside, there's no 60 hertz to worry about, because if you're 10 feet away. So wearing these clothes inside the house is to protect you from the RF. So for a woman that's pregnant to have a belly belt around her to protect the baby, yeah, great. Wonderful idea. But it doesn't stop the signal from coming down or up. If your neighbor downstairs has a Wi-Fi router and you're sitting there, it's still coming up through you. So you need to have something on the floor underneath you to stop the Wi-Fi from coming up from downstairs. But yeah, so if you've got a Wi-Fi hoodie, it's still coming in, and then it's hitting my reflective Wi-Fi shield and bouncing it back. So have I reduced the Wi-Fi signal, or have I increased it? If it's coming from this direction, I may be getting 2 or 3 times the signal. Yeah. It's stopping it from coming from behind. But if the signal's coming this way, I've probably made the situation 2 or 3 times worse.
Yeah, to me, and that's what I was thinking of. The only time I would wear things like that is like in an airplane or an airport, and maybe you're reflecting it and it's hitting other people. But it's the Faraday cages, I think, they're complex, and the angle of incidence is important. That's what measuring with a tri-field EMF meter. It's all about the angle of incidence, and I think it's more complex than people realize. These tools all have their place, but it's something we need to critically think about and be honest about more, I think.
And unless you measure, you don't know. So measure before, measure afterwards. We know a number of people who had the resources to put in a Faraday room, and having done so, got sicker and then had to pay to have it taken out because it actually made their situation far worse. So, $5,000-$10,000 to do a Faraday room. So if there's other people in the house, your Faraday wall is now increasing their RF, because it's like holding up a mirror to a light, it's reflecting it back. So it's complicated.
Yeah, what I took away from the Faraday room.
Oh.
Yeah, test, don't guess, I guess, is the sort of the saying. But I guess I'll worry about the Faraday room when I live by myself and don't have to worry about other people.
It's just the fundamental. I think we need to get back to the fundamentals of frequency, wavelength, photons, and what they actually mean. Shorter wavelengths. So we're going to have less penetration, right? But the low frequencies, we're going to have way more. So I think there's just a lack of scientific knowledge and dishonesty by some companies.
Yeah, because you look at if you got a few years ago, 4G phone, get in an elevator, a metal box inside a concrete tube inside a building, phone still works.
Yeah, true. It's true. Well, Anthony, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And my mind a lot of stuff has been sort of reaffirmed, and then other stuff has been a little bit blown in a good way. So I appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you? Go to your website. We'll have all of that stuff, of course, in the description and the show notes. But just to give yourself a quick shout out here, where can people follow and find you guys?
Yeah, the website is live.emfsafe.com. Live, Live, EMF Safe, SAF for Frank, liveemfsafe.com. There's lots of information on there about all the subjects we've talked about. Videos. I did a experts interview series. I interviewed some of the top building biologists and EMF consultants in the country. One guy had been in business for 30 years, one for 10 years, one for 20 years. So there's an interview with a doctor there, naturopathic doctor. Some very, very good information. Great resource if you want to know what's actually going on and hear from the experts. And they all say, number one, if you can, turn it off. That doesn't mean turn off the coffee pot or the toaster or the TV. If your TV is plugged in, it's still broadcasting Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. You need to unplug the devices, and if you can, kill the circuit. And when you kill the circuit, you have solved the problem. If you can't kill the circuit, unplug what you can. Distance is your friend. Shield what you can't get away from. Those are the principles. Turn off what you can, get away from what you can't, and shield what you can't get away from.
Love it. I love the fundamentals, and I think this will be a great sort of introductory resource to EMF and production. So thank you, Anthony, and thank you for everyone joining us for another episode of Decentralized Radio. We'll catch you in the next one.